A doctor was summoned to the prison to see an elderly female prisoner. When he discovered her true identity, he was left speechless. For several hours now, Vivian had not been at ease, walking nervously from room to room, trying to make the right decision. She and her husband Travis had been married for 7 years, and 3 years ago they had a son, Ben. But unlike her husband, Vivian was not happy with such a quiet family life. Travis worked as a doctor and gave all his time to work, while Vivian had to do all the housework and childcare. And that did not correspond to her idea of happiness. Her friend Mary was often surprised to hear her complain. Vivian had everything a woman could only dream of. A fully providing and loving husband, a healthy child, a developed beyond his years child, their own apartment, and a car. Mary sincerely did not understand the discontent of her friend. "Mary, please understand me, there is no more passion between us. And I want to feel that men like me." Vivian unsuccessfully tried to convey her point to her friend. "I want to live life to the fullest. Look, our friends are settling in well. Holly flew to Bali with a boyfriend, and Nina moved to London. I also want to. All I have is boredom. Well, Nina's parents still support her, and she doesn't have a husband. And Holly lives with a man much older than her, besides, bald and pot-bellied." Mary tried to object. "So what? My husband is young and handsome and, according to you, successful. But what's the use? I'd rather live with a bald and pot-bellied man if he would take me abroad and fulfill all my desires." It was strange for Mary to hear such words, for she herself would never even think of another man if she were married. "You see, I don't think about other men. I just can't get over Glenn." Vivian finally sighed. Mary even choked up when she heard about Vivian's ex-boyfriend. "Are you kidding? Glenn is nothing to compare with your husband. And why would you suddenly remember him? You broke up a long time ago. If I'm not mistaken, he left our city." Vivian made a puzzled face. "Just imagine, I thought so too. But he came back. I happened to run into him downtown. You can't imagine what he's become now. He's always been handsome and now he's so much better looking. He's so fashionable, brutal, pumped up, his hair looks great. When I saw him, I knew I had lost my head. He invited me to a cafe. We sat there and talked about everything. Turns out he was married but divorced. No kids. He works for a big company as a general manager. He travels around the world. That's so cool." "Maybe," Mary nodded vaguely. "But I don't understand why you care so much." "Because," Vivian made a meaningful expression on her face, "because we were together. The same day we met, he called me to his place, and I went. We've been dating ever since." Mary could not believe that Vivian had decided to do such a thing. She tried to talk to Vivian, to appeal to her common sense. "Vivian, Travis doesn't deserve to be treated this way. You are very lucky to have a husband, but if he finds out, think about what will happen then. You won't be able to hide it for long. Nothing will happen if you keep quiet. You just stay shut up, otherwise our friendship is over," shouted Vivian wickedly. Of course, Mary was not going to say anything, but not because of Vivian's threats, but because of Travis, for she did not want to upset him. After that conversation, she did not communicate with her friend for a long time. But Vivian was not much worried about her quarrel with Mary because all of her thoughts were now about Glenn and the decision she had to make. Glenn was going on a long business trip to France and asked Vivian to go with him. Vivian tried to explain that she could not leave her little son now. But Glenn made it clear that she would not get another such chance to start a new life. He rationally explained that the child could be brought up by his father, and it was time for her to think about herself. Especially since the second such proposal from him she certainly would not receive. That was why Vivian was now rushing around the apartment, either packing her things or stopping and nervously clutching her palms. Time was running out, and having finally made up her mind, Vivian left a farewell note on the table and, without turning around, left the house with a suitcase in her hands. In the evening, a couple of hours before the end of the workday, Travis received a call from the kindergarten and was told that they had already closed and no one came for Ben. Travis was confused and could not understand why Vivian had not picked up their son. He asked the teacher to wait a little while. He could not leave work early and could not reach his wife, so the man called Mary and asked her to pick up the boy. Mary assured him that she would take him to her house before he arrived, and also tried to calm down Travis by promising to call Vivian and find out where she was. A very worried Travis took Ben away. Mary was sure that Vivian was having fun with Glenn somewhere, lost track of time, and completely forgot about her poor baby. But an hour after he left, Travis called and asked Mary to come urgently. Mary, realizing that trouble had occurred, rushed to him. Seeing Mary, a pale Travis handed her the scrap of paper his wife had left behind. In the note, Vivian confessed her love for another man, asked him not to look for her, not to wait for her return, and to take care of their son's upbringing. "Do you know anything about it?" Travis spoke quietly and looked intently at Mary. "Yes, I do. It's Glenn, her ex. Vivian recently confessed to me that she was dating him, but I didn't think it was that serious." Travis sank tiredly onto the couch and covered his face with his palms. At first, he sat quietly, but then the man seemed to burst into tears. He told Mary that all his life he had been haunted by an evil doom. At first, just like now, he and his father were abandoned by his mother. She had left at night with a man, and his father, unable to stand it, became addicted to alcohol. Travis remembered how he was crying with hunger, sitting on the dirty floor among the bottles and cigarette butts next to his drunken father, until one day his grandmother came and took him in. But she could not save his father. After several years of rampant drunkenness, one winter day he froze to death in an alleyway. Mary could hardly hold back her tears. She had no idea how much of a burden Travis had been carrying in his soul all that time, and Vivian's deed had wounded the already unhealed wounds. "Travis, I'm so sorry. I want to help you so much. It will be hard for you alone with Ben." "No need, I can manage. You knew everything and you didn't tell me. Go away." Mary tried to explain why she couldn't tell him, but Travis didn't want to listen to her and kicked her out the door. 5 years passed. One day there were circumstances and Travis was sent to work temporarily in a women's prison colony. As soon as he arrived, he was summoned to see a woman who had become very sick at night. The woman had been placed in an inpatient facility, and Travis asked for her documents in order to study her medical history. When he saw the name on the file, he turned very pale and sat quietly in a chair for a while, trying to comprehend what had happened. Then, having come to his senses, he resolutely went to the room with the new patient. The woman was lying on a gray-washed sheet with an expression of unbearable suffering on her face. Travis looked at her, and in his mind, he heard the voice of a little boy, crying by the rain-soaked window, calling for his mother, missing her madly, and not understanding why she had abandoned him. And now, this woman who had once abandoned him, just a little boy, lay before him, in unbearable pain. "Well, hello, Mom," Travis spoke with difficulty, gazing into the woman's clouded eyes. The woman froze, rose a little, and looked intently into the face of the doctor leaning over her. She was silent for a few seconds, and then, with a startled cry, she sank heavily on the bed, losing consciousness. Travis brought her to her senses, gave her a painkiller, but forbade her to talk, though there was no need for any words. The next few hours he spent searching for a clinic in the city where they could take a complex patient and conduct emergency surgery and prepare the necessary documents. His mother looked at him trying to examine every feature of his face, and tears streamed endlessly down her sunken, wrinkled cheeks. She could not believe that this stately man, a respected doctor, was her boy, her son, whom she had once left without hesitation for an unworthy man. She remembered how ruthlessly life had treated her for it. The man for whom she had left her family had turned out to be a traitor and had made her suffer. It was because of him that she was imprisoned for large-scale financial fraud. The woman trusted her lover, and he set her up by hanging all the blame for the illegal business in the company. After cleverly handling the case and getting rid of her, he soon married a young woman, bought a huge house, and had children. After completing her first sentence, Travis's mother found her dishonest former lover, and she had only one goal: to find out why he did what he did since she loved him so much. When she arrived at his house, she threw a tantrum accusing him of betrayal, but he just looked at her silently with a sneer and then called the police. Her former lover accused her of assault, paid the investigator generously, and she was given a new sentence. Although it was clear that the case had been trumped up, no one cared, and she had no one to ask for help. That's how the woman ended up back in prison. She often thought about her husband and son in prison. She remembered Travis as she had seen him on the last day before she left home, a thin boy, with big gray eyes on his pale face, with unruly locks of hair sticking out in all directions. And now he was in front of her, such a grown-up and handsome man, well-educated and in a noble profession. The woman thought that perhaps, in spite of her departure, her husband had still managed to give her son a good upbringing. She tried to imagine what her ex-husband looked like now. He had probably grown gray and old over the years, and she was desperate to see him goodbye. The woman understood that her chances of life were small, even though she had undergone an operation. Perhaps, thanks to her doctor's efforts, she had a few extra months to beg for her son's forgiveness. When Travis came to the ward to inquire about his mother's condition, she called out to him as she had when he was a child, tenderly, affectionately, and Travis's heart trembled. It seemed to him as if all those long years of pain and distressing memories had never happened. He walked over to the bed, took a chair, and sat down beside the sick woman. "Son, forgive me for everything. I am very guilty, but God must have forgiven me if He allowed me to see you at the end of my life. I beg you." "Mother, please stop. I have been used to it for a long time and I am not angry. I'm just sorry for you because you broke your own life and lost everything that was dear to you. But apparently you never became happy." Tears streamed down his mother's exhausted face, and Travis tried to console her as best he could. They had a long talk. Travis told his mother about his life and his father. When she heard that he had been brought up by his grandmother and that her husband had drunk heavily and died a few years after her disappearance, the woman bitterly admitted that she had not only made her son suffer but had also ruined her own husband. Weeping with impotence and her own stupidity and cruelty, the woman also told her son about her sad life. Travis's heart was breaking with pity for this poor woman who had been so late in realizing her mistakes. The next day he went to see her with Ben, and tears streamed down the woman's face. 3 months later she passed away. In her last hours, Travis was with her. He held his mother's hand and spoke to her tenderly, while he gasped himself at the pain he had carried in his heart since childhood, which was overwhelming him and tearing at his heart at this moment. A year passed. One morning, while getting ready for work, Travis heard the doorbell ring. Not understanding who would come to visit at such an early hour, Travis opened the door. Vivian stood on the threshold and smiled guiltily. "Travis, hello. Forgive me," Vivian said. "I know that you still love me, and I really want to prove to you that I love you very much too. I realized that when we broke up." "Really? And it took you a long 7 years to realize that. Why not 10 or 15? "Anyway, it's too late." Vivian stood, blinking frequently, apparently not expecting such an answer. She was sure her husband still loved her and was looking forward to her return, but his reaction surprised her unpleasantly. She tried to justify herself and reminded Travis that they have a son, but suddenly Mary came out of the room and Vivian understood everything. Mary spoke calmly and confidently. "Vivian, it's not your family anymore, it's mine. You abandoned what you had on your own. Travis and I have 2 beautiful sons now, Ben and Andrew, and we're also expecting a girl." And Mary stroked her belly. Vivian was furious. She screamed about Ben being her son, and Mary only brazenly appropriated her family. But Mary reminded Vivian that she had always treated Ben as her own son, and in addition, she was his godmother and would certainly raise him as a good man and would never abandon him, unlike his own mother. Then a sleepy Ben came out of the room and asked, "Mom, who is that woman?" Mary hugged the boy and then took him by the hand and led him back into the room. Vivian could not believe what was happening. She looked at Travis stunned, trying to find some sympathy or a hint of understanding in his gaze. But all she came across was his mocking look. "I hope I don't have to explain anything else to you?" asked Travis with an unfunny grin. "I don't know. I thought he would forgive me. I am his mother." "Mother," said Travis with bitterness in his voice. "Well, maybe someday he will be able to forgive you, but maybe not. It will all depend on how you behave yourself." Vivian got angry. How dare he treat her like that? She tried her usual way to make a scandal and make herself look unfairly offended, but Travis did not listen to her and slammed the door in front of her. And why should he have listened to her? After all, he had a real reliable family now, a loving wife and wonderful children, whom he could no longer imagine his life without. And Vivian was free to go her own way, the one she had chosen for herself. Let her go as far away as possible from him and his happiness, and never return.